Hi there, thank you for joining the Creo Interactive Surface Design Extension presentation. The objective is to review and demonstrate key benefits of ISDX. We'll do a brief introduction and we'll go over the topics. So we'll take a look at the ISDX environment, curve and surface creation, and also parametric control. At the very end, we'll also do some Q&A. All right, my name is Bill. My focus is on industrial design at Boundary Systems. A little bit about us as a company. We are a tech leader. Some partners include PTC, Etraj, and others. We are one of the 16 fastest growing private companies in Cleveland, and we're a part of the PDSVision group of global companies. Some capabilities of ours include PLM, data management, CAD design and consulting, simulation, and product development. We've been mentioned for the Inc. 5000, Weatherhead 100, and some major accreditations of ours include PTC Platinum Partnership, the Windchill Certified Implementer, PTC Preferred Service Provider, and we are PTC authorized and certified training partners for Creo, Windchill, MathCAD, and Arbortext. Some software solutions that we provide are PTC software solutions, of course, Tacton, Moldex 3D, Xformation, Etraj, ITI, ZWCAD, Keyshot, Sigmaxim, and Simerix. Yeah, so again, we'll take a look at the ISDX environment, creating curves and surfaces. And we'll also take a look at how we can use parametric control using predefined sketches that our curves are tied to from ISDX, and also exporting some dimension and / parameters from ISDX that we can modify outside of the ISDX environment. All right, so what is ISDX? ISDX combines the power of parametric modeling with the flexibility of freeform surfacing. It allows you to create complex freeform curves and surfaces directly within a single intuitive and interactive environment. And it's really perfect for designers and those who need a more fluid and less restrictive modeling environment. So if you have guys that worked in Alias before, or Rhinoceros, for example, they would really take to this environment, as it allows a more free-form, free-flowing approach to design, and there's less constraints. Yeah, so the ISDX modeling environment, within the environment, we'll take a look at the style tree, which is basically similar to the model tree that you're accustomed to in Creo. We'll take a look at the menus, the shortcuts that we have within ISDX, the 4-view layout. So this is kind of nice. Instead of having the main window that we use to model within Creo, we have the 4 views here. So we can model with all of these views within the top view, front view, right view, and then also this isometric view here in the top right. And then there's also the active plane, which we use to basically specify the plane that we want to sketch on. Curve and surface creation. Connecting curves using soft points, copying and offsetting curves, drop curve, creating surfaces, trimming curves, surface analysis. So these are some of the things that we'll cover today. Parametric control. Yes, you can use a parametric framework to add dimensional control. So, for example, you can see down here in the bottom image here to the left and the right as well, that we have a sketch that determines the length of the part and also the width. So the idea is that you can create the sketched framework beforehand, and then when you go into the ISDX environment, you can create your curves, which are then linked to these sketches, so that once you're finished designing, creating your curves and surfaces in ISDX, when you leave the environment, you can then update this sketch that was created, and then it'll in turn scale the model. All right. Okay, so let's get right into it from here, and I'll open up the Creo Session. Okay, so right now you can see that we have some predefined sketches. We have sketch 1, and again, this determines the length and width of the product. And we have sketch 2, which we'll use to create some holes. So to start, let's turn on our datum planes. And from here, we're just going to create an offset plane from datum plane right. And we'll just link that, snap that to the center, and we'll call this center plane. Okay, and again, these sketch 1 and sketch 2, sketch 1 specifically will be the sketch that we link our curves with an ISDX to. So, all right, so from here, we're actually going to go straight to the style feature. All right, so once we're in the style feature, you can see that we have the style tree, again, very similar to the normal Creo model tree that we're accustomed to. And then we also have the 4-view layout. So up here to the right in graphics toolbar, we have show all views. And if I go there, you can see that we can now create our curves and surfaces in these 4 views. And this really helps us kind of see exactly what modifications we're making and the result of those modifications within these different views. So again, I can scale one view. So if I want the isometric view to be scaled up, I can drag the center over and focus more on that quadrant, right? Okay, so for the time being, I'm going to hide these planes, but before that, I want to speak to the set active plane, right? So basically, if I want to sketch on a planar surface, on a datum plane, for example, I need to specify which plane I'm going to sketch on. So in this case, I have my active plane set to top. But if I right click, for example, in this menu, I can go to active or set active plane. And I can specify, hey, you know what? I don't want to sketch on the top plane. Let's instead sketch on the front plane, right? Then from here, I can create my curves. And you can see up here in the top left of my ribbon, it says planar curve. And that's the curve, or that's the surface that I'm sketching on, all right? For the time being, I'm going to switch back to the top plane. So we'll go to set active plane, grab that top plane again, right? I don't really want to see the rest of these planes, so I'll hide them, okay? But you can also see that I'm seeing the sketched entity or the sketched line that defines the length of my surface that I'll be creating, but I'm not seeing the other one here. And that's only because it's hidden below the line that you're seeing here in the center. If I go to operations, preferences, I can say, you know what? I don't really need the grid to show here because I know which plane or which datum plane I'm sketching on. So I can just deselect you. So I'll just deselect display grid, click OK. So I'm still sketching on that top plane. You're just not seeing the active plane grid. Okay, so from this point, I can either go up here to the ribbon and click curve, or I can right click and say curve here, okay? And then you can see that because I have the active plane selected, it defaults to a planar curve, all right? So from here, I can hold down shift and the left mouse button, and I can snap my first point from my curve, then hold shift and snap to that point, and hold shift and snap to that point, okay? So once we have defined this curve here, we have to actually edit that curve in order to adjust tangency, for example. So to do this, I can just right click here. I can say edit definition, and then I can select the endpoint. So for example, this point here, I can say, hey, you know what? I want this tangency to be normal to the front plane. So if I turn my planes back on, we can see that we have our front plane here. So I'll select that point. I can right click and say, be normal to the front plane, right? And you see that it bumps that out. So that curve is now perpendicular at this point to that front plane, right? Then same thing on that. So I can right click the handle here that you see extended. I can right click that and say normal to the front plane, okay? Then click OK. All right, and I'll hide my planes again. You may find yourself in a position where you need to offset a plane. So I might want to copy this one and offset it and then scale it. So from here, I can just select that plane or that curve, sorry, then go to curve, copy. So once I'm here in copy, you can see that up in the ribbon, I have some options here. So I want to change this from free to horizontal, vertical, right? And I want to make this a center scale. And now from here, if I go into my top plane or top view, sorry, I can grab this point here. I can scale this, right? Now the issue here is that it's scaling, right? But the problem is that it's also moving this curve in the X direction. I want it to remain in the same position it was in the X direction. So within the options tab, I can go to the X coordinate and I can change that, or the X axis, I can change that to 0. And now it shifts us back to its original position, right? But it's scaled, all right? So from here, I'm now going to change this drag to normal, to that normal, and then grab the Z axis handle here and then drag that up. And as I drag this, notice that in this options tab, in that Z axis, it's showing me the dimension that it's being offset. So I can come in here, I can change that. I can say, hey, you know what? Let's make this 10 and hit enter. Okay. All right, so from here, let's go ahead and create some more curves. So let's right click and go into curve. And this time we do want a planar curve, right? But we don't want to sketch on the top plane. We actually want to sketch on the front plane. So I'll right click and I'll say set active plane, and I'll select that front plane. Okay, so now when I sketch, I'll be sketching planar on that front plane. Let's deselect the datum planes. All right, and let's start the curve creation. So let's go ahead and click Shift again and hold down the left mouse button, and we'll snap that endpoint there and that point there. I'm gonna right click and go to Edit. But notice that the first point didn't really snap to the original curve. So let's grab that and then hold Shift again and then snap it. Okay, so from here, I'm gonna grab this endpoint, right click that tangency handle and say, let's make this normal to the top plane. Okay, and for this one, let's grab that, make it normal to the center plane. And we'll kind of just repeat that on the right side as well. So we'll just do a planar curve from here to here, edit definition, and we'll adjust these normal to the center plane and also the top plane. All right, click OK, and we'll hide our datum planes again. So once we have these curves, we now have enough information, we now have enough curves to create our surface. So from here, again, we get access to these tools up in the ribbon, here's surface, or we can right click and grab surface and grab this curve, that curve, this third curve, and the fourth curve, and now here's our surface. Now notice here though that we also have these tangency handles here or lines for the surface. So if I want to make sure that the surface is normal to the front plane, which is this plane here, I can right click this line, say normal, and then this line as well, and make that normal. Okay. So we also have the option to do a preview. So if I'm going to preview how this would look if it was mirrored about the front plane, for example, I can come up here to the right in the toolbar. I could do a mirror, select that, select the front plane. I can kind of view what that would look like if it was mirrored. So this is a nice little tool to make sure that our design intent is correct. All right, so from here, I'm gonna click OK. All right, I'll change my selection filter to surface or quilt. I'm gonna grab that quilt and I'm gonna mirror about the front plane. All right, I'm also gonna merge these two together. So I'll grab that first surface or that first quilt, the second, and I'll merge these together. And I'll select that quilt that was merged and I'll thicken it. Let's make that 1, right? I don't like the way it's I don't want it to actually move in the y axis. I want this to kind of be just flat to that top plane. So let's go to options. Let's change this from normal to surface to controlled fit, and I'll deselect the Y translation. That's going to drop that down. Okay. All right. All right. So there's the thicken. Okay. So we also have sketch 2 here. So I'm going to use that to create our extrude. So we'll go to extrude here, and extrude that sketch, and we'll remove material. And let's make sure it's through all. Okay. And then from here, let's also create a round. So let's go to round, auto round. Let's make sure that we have the correct radius. There it is. Okay. So from here, though, we actually want to make some changes. Let's go back, and you can currently see that we have our surface created. I can come in here, I can grab sketch 1, for example, go into edit, and because those style curves or those ISDX curves are linked to the sketch that was created, I can change these dimensions, right, from 40 to 55, for example, right, and that's going to update and change and scale the way that we want it, which is good. I'm going to undo that for now. All right. And I also want to mention that if I go to my style feature, left click, select it, I don't have an option to edit any of the dimensions for the tangency lengths for my curves, the offset dimension for this curve that was offset from the base to here. I don't have those dimensions. So what I can do is I can actually go back into the style feature, and I can enable those parameters so that they're actually able to be edited / changed or modified outside of the ISDX environment. So if I go back to the style feature, edit definition here, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and create another curve. So if I select the surface, you can see that we just created this surface with these 1, 2, 3, 4 curves, right? But we also have more control. So if I want to kind of determine or add more detail to the surface by adding curves in that second direction, I can do that. So for example, if I click on cancel, I can go to curve. I can make the center plane my active plane, right? And then from here, I can actually create another curve from here to here. Then add points. We'll add a midpoint here, and here. All right. Then let's first go to the endpoints, select the tangency handle. And for this one, for example, we also have the ability to add a draft tangent. So I can select draft tangent and then click the top plane, for example, and I can say that, hey, you know what, I want the draft to be negative, 6 here, for example. All right. Then this endpoint will make this guy normal to the front plane. All right. But then we can also come in here and take these points that we created and kind of move these around to get the design that we want. Okay, so we've created that curve, but you can see that we haven't actually added that curve to the surface definition, right? So what I can do is I can go back into the surface now that I created that internal curve, add a definition on that surface. And then from here, I'm not going to click in the primary change. We've already defined the 4 chains that make up the primary chains for the surface, but instead we'll click in the internal chains collector and then select this last curve that we created. And now you can see that that surface updates. And again, if you want to go into the 4-view layout, you can do that, right? And that allows you to come in here. Let's zoom into these. I can select this curve, right? And in these 4 views, I can see, what the modification result is, or what the result of the modification is when I take this point and I move it. So I'll turn that off for now. All right. There's also the ability to do an analysis on the surface that you're creating, or even an analysis on a curve. So for example, this last curve that I created, I can select it. I can go to the curvature analysis up here in the analysis group, all right? And it's going to show me that curve, all right? I can save it as well. If I can also hide it. If I want to do an analysis on a surface, I can go to reflection, for example, grab that surface and take a look at how that looks here. All right. But one thing that I want to do at this point is I want to go into the curves and determine or specify that I want to include those dimensions outside of the ISDX environment so that they can be modified and changed outside of the ISDX environment. So the first thing that I'll do is I'll go into this bottom curve. I'll go to the tangent tab and I'll select this point, for example. You can see that currently we have relaxed length set. If I change this to fixed length, right, and I can change this to 20, for example. If I click the option here to the right, or the button here to the right, you can see that it says export tangent length parameter, and that's what will allow me to adjust this parameter outside of the ISDX environment. So I'll select that, and then same thing for this point, fixed length, and I'll just kind of go through these, go through all of them here. All right, we can also add the parameter for the draft. So we go to draft, which is 6 right now. We'll change that and click the parameter button, and we'll add the fixed length 4, and then this guy right here. Okay. All right. So now if I come over here and I go to OK, right, you can see that before, when I clicked on the style tool or the style feature, you didn't have the option to edit dimensions, but now we do. So if you look in the mini toolbar here in the top left corner, you have edit dimension. So if I select that, now we can actually edit these dimensions. So there's the draft angle, there's the tangency length here, here, and here. One thing I should probably add that I didn't is if I go into this top curve that we copied and offset, I can actually add that as well. So I can go to offset, add that parameter, click OK, click OK, go to the style feature, edit dimension, and now here's an offset dimension. So if I want to actually bring this down a bit, halfway, I can change it from 10 to 5, click enter, regenerate, right? And now that's obviously a lot shorter than it was, right? Undo that, all right? I'll go ahead now and I'll just adjust this sketch. So I'll grab that sketch, go to edit, and I'll change this dimension to 55, for example. Regenerate. Right. There's some other features that we can use as well. So just like we can project curves outside of the ISDX environment and then trim a surface with those curves. We can also do the same within the ISDX feature. So if I go to that style feature and go to edit definition, right, I can make sure that my active plane is set to the top plane. Select it. And I'm actually gonna say, hey, you know what, now that we have the top plane selected as active plane, I wanna actually go into the active plane orientation. So there it is right here. I'll select that, and that brings us into our top view. Then from here, I can add a circle, for example, and I'll drop that in right there, click OK, And now that I have that, I can say, hey, you know what? Now that I have that circle, I want to project it. So let's project it, or drop curve, for example. So within ISDX, it's not called project, it's called drop curve. So we'll go to drop curve in the curve group, and then the curve will be the circle that we created, and the surface will be this surface here. And you can see that it actually dropped that curve on that surface, right? Normal to the top plane that we see here. All right. Now that we have that, I can take it and say, you know what? I want to trim the surface with that curve. So from here, we go to surface trim, and we'll select the quilt that we trim, and we'll select the curve that we'll use as our trimming tool. Select that edge and that edge, and then we'll say, hey, you know what? Now that we selected the surface and the curve, now we'll select the surface to remove, and we'll grab this surface right here and click OK. All right. From here, let's exit the style feature, click OK to complete. All right, and now you can see that some features have to be, modified, regenerated. So we'll go into the mirror feature and make sure that it's reading the correct quilt. Same thing with merge and thicken. Right? Okay. And again, we can go in here, we can use that sketch one that we see here in the model tree. I can grab a dimension and then change the value. I can change that to 25. Regenerate. So the idea here is that, if you create sketches before you start your ISDX curve and surface creation, you can link those ISDX curves to your sketch curves, and you can, use that sketch curve as the framework, kind of like a skeleton model to, drive the shape of that ISDX surface. Okay. Well, yeah, that's it for me. So I'll turn it over to you guys. So that brings me back to the slides here. So yeah, if you want to reach me for more information on how to create a surface in ISDX, contact me through my email. You can also get a hold of sales if you're interested in the ISDX extension. And then again, we also have our YouTube channel. We have a lot of videos that we've recorded over the years, and there's a lot of information to be found there, and a lot that you can learn. So let me turn it over to you guys. If there's any questions that you guys have, you can ask. It looks like we don't have any questions for this. Again, you can reach out to me at some point later, and I can, jump on a web meeting, or if it's something that I can answer through an email, I can do that. And also, again, if you want to reach out to sales, you have the email here as well. So with that being said, I guess I'll go ahead then and end the webinar. Thanks for joining.